An arrogant Arab millionaire mocks his loyal assistant, laughing, "If you fit in that dress, I'll marry you." Months later, he's shocked when she returns transformed, powerful, and unbothered. This emotional story of pride, regret, and redemption will melt your heart and leave you speechless. Broken heart sparkles. It all began with laughter. The kind that sounds light but cuts deep. In a glittering Dubai boutique, where chandeliers dripped gold and the air smelled of imported roses, a young woman named Lena stood frozen before a mirror. Her eyes trembled, and her hands clenched the fabric of a white satin gown, one that shimmered like starlight but refused to fit her body. And behind her, surrounded by his entourage, stood Khalid Al-Mansour, the Arab millionaire known across Dubai for his charm, arrogance, and playboy smile. He leaned back in his chair, one leg crossed over the other, watching her struggle. Then, with that half-smirk that always made women blush, he spoke the words that would change both their lives forever. "If you fit in that dress, Lena, I'll marry you." The boutique went silent. The laughter from his friends faded into awkward coughs. But Khalid didn't flinch, his tone dripped with mockery, not affection. He was used to getting what he wanted, used to breaking hearts just to feed his pride. Lena wasn't his lover. She was his assistant, overworked, underpaid, and quietly in love with him. She had followed him everywhere for 3 years, handling his chaotic life, his business calls, and even the tears of women he left behind. But never once had she imagined being the subject of his mockery. Her chest tightened as she stood before that mirror, her reflection a cruel reminder of her pain. The dress, slim and perfect, was meant for his fiancée, Rania, a model with a flawless figure and a perfect public smile. But Khalid, in his arrogance, had tossed it to Lena as a joke when Rania walked out after an argument. "Try it on," he had said, laughing. "Let's see if it can fit loyalty, since beauty failed." Those words had stabbed her silently. Yet Lena said nothing. She bowed her head, quietly placed the dress back on its hanger, and murmured only one thing. "You'll regret saying that, sir." Khalid chuckled, his deep voice echoing in the room. "Oh, I regret nothing, Lena. I never do. But life has a strange way of turning arrogance into lessons." Months passed. Lena disappeared from Khalid's world. Her desk sat empty, her number went silent. Rumors whispered that she'd gone back to her small hometown in Jordan. Khalid didn't care, or at least that's what he told himself. But something felt missing. The order in his chaos was gone. His coffee was wrong. His schedules fell apart. His laughter didn't feel the same. Yet his pride wouldn't let him admit it. Until one evening. A grand charity gala at the Palm Jumeirah. The event was crawling with Dubai's elite, royalty, influencers, and tycoons. Khalid arrived late, dressed in his custom black tuxedo, with that same careless smirk on his face. But as he entered, the air shifted. Conversations paused. Heads turned. A woman walked in. Graceful, radiant, wearing that same white satin dress. The one he had mocked. It fit her perfectly. Her skin glowed under the golden lights, her confidence effortless, her smile calm yet powerful. And when their eyes met across the room, Khalid's heart skipped. His throat tightened. For the first time in years, the man who mocked love couldn't find his words. Because the woman in that dress wasn't Rania. It was Lena. The assistant he had humiliated. The woman he thought was beneath him. And she was no longer the fragile girl who once trembled in front of a mirror. She was someone else, strong, successful, breathtaking. Everyone turned to look at her, but Khalid couldn't move. The words he once laughed now echoed painfully in his mind. "If you fit in that dress, I'll marry you." And now, she did. But she wasn't his anymore. The air in the gala hall thickened as if time itself held its breath. Khalid couldn't look away. Every note of the orchestra faded into a blur of sound, drowned by the racing of his heartbeat. The same woman he once belittled now stood radiant, poised, and utterly untouchable. Lena had changed, so much that even the whispers in the room carried her name like reverence. Her once simple curls now framed her face in soft waves, her gown hugged her body with effortless grace, and her eyes, they no longer held the quiet sadness he remembered. They held peace, strength, power. Khalid forced a smile, trying to appear unaffected. But the more he watched her move, gracefully greeting investors, laughing with foreign diplomats, the more he realized something was wrong inside him. Something new. Something unsettling. Regret. When the opportunity finally came, he excused himself from his business partners and walked toward her. His confidence faltered slightly with each step. The man who once commanded boardrooms and hearts alike was now uncertain, hesitant, even. Lena noticed him long before he reached her. She didn't flinch, didn't panic. Instead, she turned slowly, her eyes locking with his in calm recognition. The world's most arrogant millionaire suddenly felt like a schoolboy facing judgment. She smiled, polite, distant. "Good evening, Mr. Al-Mansour." The formality stung more than he expected. She had always called him, sir, but now it sounded like she was addressing a stranger. Khalid tried to match her calmness. "You look different." She nodded lightly. "I should hope so. Growth changes people." That single sentence cut deeper than any insult. Because behind her calm tone lay the truth he didn't want to face, she had grown, and he had stayed the same. He glanced around, desperate to regain control. "I didn't expect to see you here," he said. "You're attending on behalf of someone?" Lena gave a soft laugh, warm but sharp. "I'm not attending on behalf of anyone, Khalid. I'm hosting." He froze. She continued, her voice steady. "After I left your company, I started my own foundation, the Dawn Initiative. We provide scholarships for women in rural areas. The event tonight is part of that." It hit him like thunder. The woman he once mocked had built something far greater than his ego could ever contain. Khalid swallowed hard. For the first time, he didn't know what to say. He'd spent years surrounded by luxury and power, but none of it prepared him for this moment, standing in front of the woman whose worth he once overlooked. Lena studied him quietly. "Funny, isn't it?" she said softly. "You once told me loyalty didn't fit in designer dresses. But maybe what didn't fit that day wasn't me, it was your pride." The words shattered something deep within him. Before he could respond, the event coordinator called Lena to the stage. The crowd applauded as she took the microphone, her white gown catching the light like a symbol of victory. Khalid watched her speak, eloquent, graceful, fearless. She thanked guests, shared stories of the women her foundation had helped, and ended her speech with a message that pierced him straight through the chest. Never underestimate someone because of how they look. The flower that blooms in silence often grows the strongest roots. The hall erupted in applause. Khalid didn't clap. He couldn't. He just stood there, lost between admiration and regret. The woman he once mocked was now a symbol of hope. And as she stepped down from the stage, smiling for photographers, he realized something terrifying. He was falling for her. But this time, she wasn't his to claim. The night of the gala lingered in Khalid's mind long after the lights dimmed. For weeks, he couldn't escape the image of Lena standing on that stage, confident, graceful, untouchable. Every word she'd spoken echoed in his head like a haunting melody. "Maybe what didn't fit that day wasn't me, it was your pride." Those words cracked something inside him. For the first time in years, Khalid questioned the man staring back at him in the mirror. The sharp suits, the luxury watches, the empire he built, all of it suddenly felt meaningless. Because the one person who once looked at him with admiration now looked through him as if he were invisible. He couldn't stand it. A week later, he sent her flowers, white lilies, her favorite. She returned them with a small card that read, Respect doesn't come wrapped in roses. That stung. But it didn't stop him. He sent another, this time, a handwritten note. It wasn't smooth or poetic. It was raw. Honest. Lena, I was a fool. I mocked the very heart that kept me grounded. Let me make things right. No reply. Days turned into weeks, and his pride began to crumble. The mighty Khalid al-Mansur, once feared and admired, now sat by his phone like a boy waiting for a miracle. Then one afternoon, his secretary informed him that the Dawn Initiative had requested a business partnership proposal meeting. His heart skipped. She wanted to meet him, but for business. Not forgiveness. Still, it was a chance. When Lena walked into his office, everything felt different. The last time she stood there, she was his assistant, waiting for commands. Now she was a CEO, with a team of advisors trailing behind her. Her calm confidence filled the room. Khalid stood to greet her. You look. He stopped himself before the old charm slipped out. Instead, he said quietly, you look happy. She smiled faintly. Happiness doesn't depend on who stands beside you, Khalid. Sometimes it's about finally standing on your own. The meeting began, but he barely heard the numbers. He was too focused on her composure, the way she spoke with certainty, how her voice carried authority without arrogance. The very qualities he once mocked were now the ones he admired most. When the meeting ended, he tried to speak again. Lena, I know this isn't the time, but, do you ever think about? She interrupted gently. About what could have been? No, Khalid. I think about what is. I think about purpose, about peace, about women who were told they weren't enough, and proved the world wrong. That's where my thoughts live now. He fell silent. But before she turned to leave, she paused. You taught me something, though, she said. You taught me that sometimes, the harshest humiliation births the strongest transformation. So thank you, for laughing that day. Her words were kind, but her tone carried finality. She left him standing there, quiet, broken, and humbled. That night, Khalid drove through the streets of Dubai aimlessly. The city lights blurred against the windshield. For the first time, he saw himself clearly, not the successful millionaire, but the man who once thought kindness was weakness. And in that moment, he whispered to himself, if only I had known the value of a woman before I tried to measure it in size. He parked by the seaside, staring at the waves crashing against the rocks. Somewhere in the distance, he could still hear her laughter, the kind he once caused through pain, now echoing with power. He knew it then. He had lost her. But maybe, just maybe, this loss was the beginning of his redemption. Redemption doesn't happen overnight. It begins in silence, when pride finally kneels and the truth starts whispering in the cracks of one's soul. For Khalid al-Mansur, that silence began the night he watched the waves break beneath the moonlight. The same man who once filled rooms with arrogance now sat alone, replaying every cruel word he'd ever said to Lena. Every smirk. Every insult disguised as a joke. Every time he thought money could buy respect. That night changed him. He didn't tell anyone. He didn't make public promises or grand gestures. Instead, he started small, by listening. By unlearning. He began showing up to his own company's staff meetings, not to speak, but to hear. He found himself sitting with junior employees, asking about their struggles, their ideas, their dreams. He realized how blind he'd been, how his world of gold and ego had made him deaf to the very people who built it. His old friends laughed. They called him the philosopher millionaire, joking that maybe heartbreak had turned him soft. But Khalid didn't argue. He simply smiled, because for once, he didn't care about image. He also began visiting charity centers quietly, without the media. No cameras. No applause. Just him, helping serve meals, carrying boxes, talking to young boys who reminded him of the man he used to be, lost in pride and hungry for validation. It wasn't about winning Lena back anymore. It was about earning his own humanity back. Weeks later, fate crossed their paths again. This time, not at a gala or a boardroom, but at a women's shelter in Sharjah. Khalid was there helping distribute food and supplies. The sun was fierce that morning, and his white shirt clung to him with sweat. He looked nothing like the arrogant man from the boutique months ago. His hands were dirty, his sleeves rolled up, but his eyes carried something pure, peace. And then he saw her. Lena. She had come with her foundation team to check on the center's progress. For a moment, both of them froze. Time seemed to still between the sound of laughter and the cries of children playing nearby. But this time, Khalid didn't rush to impress her. He didn't speak first. He simply smiled, nodded respectfully, and continued his work, handing out supplies to the women in line. Lena watched quietly, unsure what to feel. She noticed the difference, not just in his actions, but in his aura. There was no arrogance. No need to be seen. Just quiet humility. Later that afternoon, as she prepared to leave, she found him sitting under a tree, surrounded by children, telling them stories. The kids laughed as he mimicked animal voices, his laughter blending with theirs like music. She approached him slowly. He looked up and smiled, not with charm, but with sincerity. "I didn't expect to see you here," she said softly. He shrugged. "I didn't expect to want to be here. But I'm learning that the best kind of peace doesn't come from owning everything, it comes from giving something." For the first time, Lena didn't see the man who mocked her. She saw a man trying, genuinely trying, to be better. There was silence between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind that spoke louder than words. As she turned to leave, she said quietly, "Change doesn't erase the past, Khalid. But it can redeem it." He nodded. "I'm not asking to erase anything, Lena. I'm just trying to be the man I should have been when you still believed in me." Her eyes softened, just a little. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was the first crack in the wall she'd built around her heart. And for Khalid, that was enough. Because this time, he wasn't chasing her love. He was chasing his purpose. Change had softened Khalid, but it hadn't broken him. The more he gave, the lighter he became. The mansion that once echoed with parties and meaningless laughter now sat quiet, peaceful. The man who once measured life by deals and conquests had learned to find joy in simple things, children's smiles, old stories, moments of silence. Yet deep inside, one truth still lingered: he had hurt the only woman who had ever loved him sincerely. Months passed, and Lena continued her work with the Dawn Initiative. Their paths crossed often now, at charity events, community projects, and meetings. Each time, Khalid remained respectful, keeping his distance. No more grand gestures, no more apologies in words. He let his actions speak. People began to notice. The arrogant millionaire was gone. In his place stood a man of compassion, quietly funding hospitals, sponsoring orphanages, and creating scholarships for women across the Middle East. But even with all his success, his eyes still searched for something, or someone. Then came the day everything changed. A devastating sandstorm swept through the outskirts of Sharjah, destroying several community centers, including one funded by Lena's foundation. She rushed there immediately, heart pounding, trying to help trapped families. Amid the chaos, the winds howled, and the air filled with dust so thick it burned the lungs. And then, through the storm, a familiar voice shouted her name. "Khalid." He appeared out of nowhere, covering his face with a scarf, helping pull children from a collapsed shelter. He had come without hesitation the moment he heard what happened. Together, they worked side by side, saving lives, guiding women and children to safety. At one point, a wall beam gave way. Without thinking, Khalid pushed Lena out of harm's way, taking the blow himself. The dust swallowed them in seconds. Hours later, when the storm finally calmed, rescuers found him, injured but alive. Lena stayed by his bedside at the hospital, her hands trembling as she cleaned the cuts on his arms. When his eyes fluttered open, the first thing he saw was her face. He smiled weakly. "You always told me I'd regret my words. I think, this is what regret feels like, and grace too." Tears welled in her eyes. For the first time in a long time, she couldn't hold them back. "Why would you risk your life like that, Khalid?" He chuckled softly. "Maybe because, for the first time, I finally understood love doesn't mean owning someone. It means showing up, even when you have nothing to gain." That silence after his words was deep. Honest. Healing. Weeks passed. Khalid recovered slowly, and Lena visited often. They talked, not about the past, but about growth, about giving, about second chances. The more she saw him, the more she realized the man before her wasn't the one she had left behind. One evening, as the orange sunset painted the sky over Dubai, Khalid stood outside the hospital with her. The wind was calm now, the world quiet. He looked at her with that same softness he once mocked. "Do you remember that dress, Lena?" he asked quietly. She laughed. "How could I forget? You made sure the whole world remembered." He nodded slowly. "That day, I thought perfection was something you could wear. Now I know, it's something you become when you rise above the people who once broke you." Lena looked at him for a long moment. Then, for the first time, she smiled, not with bitterness, but with warmth. "You don't owe me an apology anymore, Khalid. You've already lived it." He bowed his head, emotion glinting in his eyes. They stood there in silence, two souls who had walked through pride, pain, and purpose, now meeting again at peace. He didn't ask for her love. She didn't promise it either. But they both knew, something new had bloomed between them. Not romance born from arrogance, but connection born from redemption. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Lena whispered, "Maybe love isn't about fitting into a dress, it's about growing into the kind of person who deserves it." And Khalid, the man who once laughed at love, finally smiled, a genuine, humbled smile. Then, Lena. I finally fit. Moral of the story. Never measure someone's worth by appearance, and never mock a heart that loves you sincerely. Life has a way of turning arrogance into lessons and humility into strength. Sometimes, the person you look down on today might be the very light that teaches you how to rise tomorrow. Rose. The end. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more captivating stories every week.